On this week's episode, Friend Code is back! How's it going, everyone? Damiani here, your moderator. And on this very special return episode of Friend Code, I'm joined by Kyle Bosman.
Hello.
Daniel Bloodworth.
Hello.
How's it going, you two?
Good stuff.
It's going well.
Welcome to the first episode of Friend Code back after going missing in action. And I'd like to start there and explain what happened there. So, unfortunately, at the end of our March period for Patreon, our pledge amount, our paid out amount dipped below 40K, which is the mark that we need to hit each month for both Reaction Shots, Ian's movie podcast with Huber, and Friend Code, our bi-weekly Nintendo podcast. So unfortunately for the month of April, it went away. But as you saw in April, thanks to all of your generosity, and thank you everyone who supported us for our most recent fundraiser to help us get looking better for E3. We're back. So we went way over 40K, it seems. So we're back for now. But it's going to take your help to keep us back. So with the coming back into Friend Code, there is one small change. So it used to be $1 and up patrons got the episode early on Sundays. Everyone else got it on Tuesdays around noon. That's going to slightly change now because our $5 tier is now our early access tier. So that means if you are a $5 and up patron, you'll get Friend Code earlier. You'll get them on Sundays now if you're a patron, and you'll get everyone else get it on Tuesday. Patrons' poll submissions will still be done for $5 and up patrons as well, so that's not changing. There's one other thing that isn't in here that I realized I announced when I called for submissions for questions for this episode. I'm changing up patrons' pulse, actually, since we're coming back.
Oh, right.
For this episode, we're going to see how it goes. There will be no dedicated section called Patrons Pulse anymore. Instead, I told everyone who was a $5 and up patron what the topics would be for this week. And I asked them to write in questions related to those specific topics.
It's a good idea.
So when we get to each segment here,
Yep.
patron questions will be drawn upon for us to discuss.
Nice.
So that means more patron questions will get in this way than just usually the 2 or 1 we even get to at the end. So while the name of the segment might be going away, I think patrons will be overall more happy with
this podcast became Patrons Pulse.
Pretty much.
It's a whole podcast now.
We should definitely change it now.
Yeah.
Patrons Pulse, and now we can get a new theme song, Kyle. Because Kyle Bosman wants Friend Code to have a better opening song.
Yes.
Because it doesn't match the enthusiasm that I have at the intro of this. So like that?
Yeah, that. Record that.
Okay.
I mean,
Isolate it.
it's been recorded.
You just did it, so I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to use that right there as the new intro. But there actually, a lot of stuff happened over the past month, but we're going to focus on stuff that happened more recently for our topics today. Starting with Nintendo just had released their financial results, their financial briefing for fiscal year 2017, which started back at just after the Switch's launch, so April 1st to the end of March this year is that time period, the reporting period. There's a lot of stuff to parse through in that. And I want to start with the first big piece of news is that Nintendo now has a brand new president.
Right.
Yes. So Kimishima is stepping down.
And he was interim president.
Yes, so let's make that clear. For those who don't know, he was only ever meant to be a temporary replacement for the late Satoru Iwata. So it wasn't going to be a long-term solution, so we were always kind of expecting there would be an announcement that there'd be a new president.
The thing was, it took years, and I honestly thought they were just going to hang on to him. I thought it was this kind of thing where he was announced as interim, but like he's just stuck around for so long, and I'm like, and he's doing a good job, and I figured like maybe they just want to keep him.
Yes, Switch was doing very well, and I thought like, oh, give him a chance. But I think in the notes from the report is that like, he was chosen because they felt he was best able to execute Iwata's plans for the Switch. Right. And it did. Like, it followed through. It became successful. Mm-hmm. But I think going forward with any, like, new initiatives, they'd like to have somebody else in charge, it sounds like.
Sure.
And thus, we have the new president, Shuntaro Furukawa. He's actually very young, only 46 years old. Puts him around, like, Iwata. Iwata was pretty young when he took over, too. Yeah. So a little bit of a trend.
But I think too, when it comes going back to this thing about whether who they choose as president, like it's a pretty big deal
for
Nintendo.
Yes.
Like, Iwata was the first person not in a family line for the past 100 years to be president of Nintendo.
That made, like, huge headlines. And, like, let's make this clear. I mean, Iwata passing kind of accelerated these two new presidents because Furukawa is only making it the 6th president in the company's 130-year history. So if Iwata had not passed on and would still be president, there would only have been 4 presidents.
So it was 3 Yamauchis, basically?
It was Yamauchi and his 2 predecessors, yes. Okay. And then Iwata took over, which Blood just said was a huge deal for not being, the family line, basically, for that. And now we've had just as many presidents in these few years, unfortunately, because of Iwata's passing, than we had in, like, the previous almost 130 years. So it's like... Yeah, that's less than 130 years, but still, like it's a big deal for them when this happens. But he has had involvement in both Nintendo proper and the Pokemon Company, so he has worked in both divisions there. And I want to start here because I'm kind of curious about this. This is a fun question. When do you first think we're gonna be introduced to him, like on camera? Like, even Kimishima got, like, an on-camera, like, part where, like, hey, this is the new president and stuff. But Koizumi ended up becoming, like, the face of Nintendo. Like, do you think, like, E3 will see him at all? Like, when do you think we're going to see him? And, just when do you think we're going to see him?
I think that's Koizumi's gig now.
Oh.
Why? Do you think that is...
So let me roll in this next part real quick.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Okay.
So our first Patron's Pulse question comes from Ryan Bremigan. Hey, allies, do you think that the new president, Furukawa, will take a more of a PR role like Iwata, basically being a face of the company and being in Nintendo Directs, or do you think that Koizumi will be basically the face of the company? Like, who do you think is going to be the face of the company?
I think Iwata was a very special case. It's actually crazy that he was hosting those videos and talking to us directly. It's not something you can expect of other CEOs to go out and put their faces out there like that. And so I'd be surprised. It'd be cool, but I don't presume that will happen.
What about you, Blood?
For me, I think it's really hard to say without really knowing this guy and his temperament. Like,
that's a good point.
Kimishima, like, I thought really, like, that didn't seem like somebody who would make sense. But this guy being younger and more, more involved in other parts of the company in the past. Like, I think, I think it could go in any direction, really. Like, it really is gonna be up to him what course he sets for that.
Is he from marketing or is he from development, or where is he from? What's his expertise?
I don't think it was actually in development.
Okay.
I was looking into that and I wasn't seeing much of a. There was one project he was attached to, and I was like, that's not it wasn't enough to like speak to me that he, like, at least within Nintendo, that he was an active developer, like on the level of Iwata. Like, I don't think that's more the case.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I see 3 basic scenarios. Either one. He shows up at E3, or he shows up at like just a random Nintendo Direct that's not as like big of a deal, or we don't see him in anything like that. We only see him at like the next like quarterly briefing. Yeah, I mean, which I think he would be at for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. He was actually at this one. He actually spoke at this one as well. So on their side, he was introduced to the investors and everyone. I'm kind of curious. I just wanted the first time getting to see him speak, basically, and present something. Like, I kind of want to see like what I get from what comes across from him after that point. But I still, personally, to answer this question, I still think Koizumi is going to be as long as Switch is the lead platform for Nintendo.
Yeah,
Koizumi is going to be the forward-facing person that you'll see interacting with us in the directs and most of the presentations.
Because he was involved with the hardware development, even, right? Yes. Yeah.
He seems to be pretty popular with like the fan base and stuff. People watching it, they've taken a liking, as well as the Splatoon developers. Like, people they love seeing the reports from the lab and stuff, and the lab coats. Nintendo's actually giving a lot of their younger talent more managerial opportunities and these chances like this to lead new teams, which kind of leads into the next part of the discussion with this point that I kind of want to steer the ship towards. So there was a recent Eurogamer interview with Giles Goddard, former Nintendo employee. Got to start with Star Fox, worked over in Japan. And he said that basically after Iwata's passing, he feels that the company has shifted towards being more interested in money than ever before. So my question is kind of like, if this is true, does this kind of like concern you? If they're going with this direction with money first, and I'm not saying that he's wrong. This could be completely what his perspective was, but I just mentioned, like, the Splatoon developers getting more, like, moment in the limelight, like Koizumi getting, like, to be the face. Like, it sounds like Nintendo is taking a little bit more risk, or giving different faces a chance to be like to have their time to be a face of the company. But which do you kind of lean towards? Do you believe this, or do you think there's some truth to this?
So there is some truth, but my feeling is we just came off of a great Zelda turnaround and a great Mario turnaround in a year where that it's claimed that they don't care about the games. So it's kind of just like, okay, Giles. But on the same side, the Nintendo Classic, the NES Classic, and the SNES Classic, those are money boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Those are not like, we can do unique things, we can make new types of games. Those are strictly money boxes. And so that's where the truth comes from, absolutely. And the mobile games.
Yeah, I just kind of bring it back to we were talking before the show about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze being full price. And, and there's some bad perception there or whatever, but the thing is there's no way that game made its money back on the Wii U, and that's one of many examples. The Wii U was failure after failure in terms of money, and so, like, Nintendo really right now they have a responsibility to those investors to bring in some money to rebound from those years where they were making games like Xenoblade Chronicles X that was never going to bring that budget back.
We have a special phrase for that responsibility. It's fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think this is probably the most appropriate use of that phrase that we've had.
We're actually talking about investors. Yeah.
But I think that's really it. Like, I don't think it's a matter of, like, Nintendo eroding their values. And in fact, like, Nintendo historically has been very resistant to things like price drops and such in the past, and I think that, like, the only reason Tropical Freeze was as low as it was on the Wii U is because they had to sell copies of that game. Otherwise, Nintendo probably wouldn't have brought it down that low and as fast as they did.
I want to also ask about, like, now with the new president in here, kind of like the future direction of the company. And this is actually our second question submission by your patrons. Sebastian Urban asks, do you think Nintendo's new president will focus more on bringing a competitive service to the market that will rival Sony and Microsoft's offerings? And can we maybe expect that Switch will get even more attention from Nintendo, like possibility of, like, ports of 3DS games like Samus Returns and Luigi's Mansion? So all in all, will we see an even more forward-headed business strategy from Nintendo from now on?
Okay. Yeah, we're just making blind assumptions now about the future, but I'm ready to.
I know. It's the fun part. Yeah, this is the fun part.
So, the first part was, will the online matter? And I think somebody who's young, who's 46, who joined the company in 2012 and saw Nintendo in some, as Blood, like, just stated, like, it was bad years for Nintendo. I think that person knows how important online is. And I do expect to see some focus on that. I expect to see Netflix on the Switch within the next 12 months, But I don't like this weird 3DS strategy. I think is just going to continue. This thing, I just don't see it. I don't see that changing.
Yeah, we'll get into that more later.
Okay,
too, so
sure.
worry.
Yeah,
I think again when it comes back to this, like, Nintendo making money-based decisions, like, this is a money-based decision. Like, the 3DS is making money it should not be making from, like, any of our perspectives, but it just keeps selling. Those games keep selling, like. In very much the same way that, like, GTA 5 keeps selling. It's like, who wants these games that hasn't bought these games, but they're still buying these games, like, constantly. And so, yeah, it's, even though it should make sense to, like, let's move on, let's, like, bring everything to the Switch. Like, I think that was even the intention at some point was to, like, we're going to merge everything into one platform. It's just going to be the Switch. But it's like, people are buying 3DS in record numbers. Let's not do that yet. You can't really ignore what your customers are saying they want through their dollars.
Yeah.
In terms of the online service, I do not think we should look at this online service as a one-to-one direct comparison to what Xbox and Sony are doing. I think it's going to be some weird other thing. It's going to be offered at a lower cost. It's going to have other features. I don't exactly know what it is, but I don't think it's going to be a very like Nintendo strange left turn that everyone is going to see as like, why are you doing it like that? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see what it is.
I need to correct myself. We'll actually find out in early May, possibly like maybe this week after our recording. You know, how our luck goes.
Tomorrow morning.
Said on Nintendo's website they would be posting in early May details about Nintendo's online service, which is targeted for September of this year to launch. So we'll see more about that. But going on like the money stuff, even like when it's hard, like you're talking about 3DS, but like even Wii U stuff coming to Switch, like being the more money oriented position. When Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still charting like top 10 and stuff, or charting very well in the MPD every month, it's kind of hard to argue about why are they doing this. You know, I expect Donkey Kong to definitely chart. And
you think Donkey Kong top 10?
I don't know about top 10. It'll definitely be in the top 20.
Okay.
Definitely top 20. It'll be like close to it might be the top or second place for Switch. I think Mario Kart 8 might sell more than
I think it still will, yeah.
But like it'll still, I expect to see a headline saying in this month time period, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on Switch sold more than that same period on Wii U, like they did with Bayonetta 2.
And that's exciting.
In the report that they just put out as well, which is really nice to see. So yeah, I don't get too worried. The reps, for me, I don't get too worried about. Even if they want to put more emphasis on making a little bit a few more bucks here and there. Here's a Nintendo Classic. Here's Super Nintendo Classic. Let's put that Wii U game on, port it onto Switch as well. We're still getting experiences like Odyssey. We're still getting Breath of the Wild. We still got Labo that just came out, and we're gonna get more stuff going forward. And I forgot like a few other games in between there.
Mario and Rabbids is completely not a like money-driven decision to me. You know that is like let's make a fun game here. It's hard to be that cynical about the games that Nintendo is putting out, basically.
Very good point. Like I think that sums it up pretty nicely.
Like you could make a case for a new Super Mario Brothers U Luigi edition.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like you just look at that. That was a boxed game, and like how can you say they're more money focused now than they were at that point?
Yeah. I guess I can see some people like just having like concerns because they've seen it in the past indications, but I don't think anything other than that like is warranted. Like there's nothing they've done yet that really should trigger that type of thought. But speaking of like sales and stuff, this report showed us that like a lot of games are doing very well. And I want to give some attention to a game series that like has always been around for Nintendo or for a long time, but doesn't seem to get like the love and respect it sometimes deserves. Mm-hmm. And Kyle's nodding because I think he knows where I'm going with this. Kirby Star Allies.
Yeah.
Sees the strongest debut month of sales, first month sales in the U.S. in the franchise's history. And to clarify that, the strongest debut month in sales in the U.S. history means it sold 90% better than the debut month of 2002's Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, which is the previous record holder.
It sold 90% better than the previous.
So we got to clarify this. So the original announcement is in terms of MPD, which goes by just sales, US. Not units anymore.
Right.
So
revenue.
It made more money than that. So like think about price difference.
But still, I'm thinking about like the Wii game. I'm like, Kirby's
that
had
was the
some
last
big
one.
games.
Yeah, it has. But we got the sales data anyway. Nintendo was so generous with this financial briefing.
More than Triple Deluxe.
So according to Nintendo's recent financial report, Kirby Star Allies so far has sold 1.26 million copies worldwide, with over 750,000 of those coming from overseas.
Wow.
And so for the record, Kyle, Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, it ended the previous record holder for fastest selling in a month.
I'm sorry, is that a Game Boy Advance game?
It was it was GBA 2002 GBA game.
Sure.
Its lifetime it ended up selling over 2 million copies. So that was the previous fastest selling
Star Allies
in a month.
Is going to crush that. Yeah.
But the ultimate king is the original Kirby for Game Boy, which Kirby Dreamland.
Sure.
It sold over 5 million copies.
That Game Boy game
that is still the number one selling one. So
doesn't that change your perspective on the business today? That's so funny. Wow.
So Kyle, I want to start with you.
Yes.
Let's start with why do you think Kirby Star Allies has achieved this record-breaking sales this fast amount of sales in such a short time?
I'll start with cynicism.
Okay.
Because I was going against it, but some cynicism is healthy.
Okay.
Switch has not had a lot of releases this year. A lot of big releases this year, and to see like a Kirby game come out, I think people who owned the Switch, who bought it for Zelda and Mario, are like, oh, this is the next one. This is the next big thing. Because I think it is a just fine Kirby game.
Okay.
And it's not that much better. It's not like it excels upon what all those other Kirby games did that sold worse. It's the platform. It sold this well because of the Switch.
Do you agree with that, Bloodworth?
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, I think that it's just kind of, yeah, we're riding high still. We still hear these reports from, indie game ports and such, like, they're selling super well on Switch. And I think, Nintendo's in a really good place just because, like, they have an install base that's just very hungry for games. And I think that's very different than in the past, where people actually would just, be satisfied with 3 or 4, big Nintendo titles a year, and now it's like they're buying Nintendo titles, they're buying indie titles, they're buying, Skyrim, they're buying whatever they can get their hands on. I think it's just one of those things where like people like Kirby, and even if it's not a very noteworthy Kirby game, it's also this family-friendly system that like you can play that with your kids. And it's not going to, be too taxing or too frustrating. You just pick up the game and everyone plays.
All right.
I think it's going to be a first Kirby game for a lot of people. When you say 1.2 million, like I think that means for a lot of those people who are just buying a Kirby game for the first time.
That's a good point.
5 million for the Game Boy game blows my mind, man. That one you can't even transform. Basically, you can suck in, swallow, and blow people away, but like you can't absorb powers.
Do you think it was also the platform at that time? Game Boy.
Right. Yes. Yeah,
for sure.
So going on like the platform, the theory that the platform is definitely helping the sales.
Yeah.
We got our next patron submitted question from Logan Tossier, or Toss. I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. Looking at Kirby sales beforehand, so historical analysis here, they've noticed that the Kirby series sells at a fairly steady amount, around 1 to 2 million for each of the mainline entries. While this is certainly good, do you think there's something they could do with the franchise to improve these sales even more and reach the success levels of some of Nintendo's other franchises? And I'll add on to this, like, basically, do you think is there something they could do to help it, but also do you think like the platform that it's on right now is enough to get them to that 2 million or even up to like, what's it going to take basically to get it to Kirby Dream Land sales of 5 million copies, Kyle Bosman?
Right. What's it going to get it to be an A-lister? And Kirby's a B-lister right now.
They made one suggestion. Like, what if they made it like a 3D platform instead of a 2D platform? Like something like that.
Honestly, I think is what it'll take. I think you have to take it out of 2D for it to become an A-list franchise for Nintendo. I mean, it's hard to say because like it just sold extremely, extremely well. Right. Mm-hmm. But the question is like, how does it go beyond that? How does it break that ceiling?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for Kirby in particular because I think some of the things that like we criticize it for being too easy are like actually strengths. Like I think that's like a lot of people bought this game because it's too easy, because again, like they want to play with their kids, they want to play with whoever, and so like that's easy just to like relax. I think, I think. Maybe not going 3D, but I think Kirby needs to do something that like feels big like that, to where you see just something that doesn't just feel like a completely like traditional Kirby game. Like it looks like a traditional Kirby game in a way, but like you have new powers, you have new things, you have new enemies, rather than sticking with all the same familiar things. Like I think you have to.
They all look exactly the same from the 3DS game,
right? Yeah. Like I think you have to do something that's going to get people that have played past Kirby games to say, "Oh, this is more than just another Kirby game," and get them excited about that. And I think there are some moves towards that in this game, but just overall, the look of it, it still just looks like it could have been a DS or a 3DS game.
All right. So I'm gonna preface. This is joking. You made a very good point, but like, so basically, Kirby needs to be legitimately open air. Like any 3D Kirby where Kirby can float up to any area of the environment map and encounter different paths and stuff like that. Like, open air is a more appropriate name for a future Kirby game than just climbing up walls and stuff in Breath of the Wild. Yeah,
man, I wonder. I think it'd actually be like I don't know if it would fit little Kirby.
It wouldn't. No.
But it's like if we're talking to answer this question of like how does Kirby get to that status? Yeah, Kirby has to somehow be a game unlike other games, not just like on other Kirby games, but its own unique game in itself.
Yeah, I honestly think that Kirby has to almost pretty much stick to 2D or do something that's more 2.5D like Donkey Kong Country, because I don't think that any game where you're looking at Kirby's butt is going to work. Like, you have to see that face
I was thinking about
all
that.
times.
Yeah, I was honestly I was thinking about like him running up to a castle, which I think is really cool, just like a tall tower and the camera like coming out under. But you're right, Kirby's appeal is like cuteness.
Just need to hand it to Retro then.
Hand it to Retro.
No, you both give pretty good ideas. Like, I think that's kind of a line of thinking anyone would, like, who's familiar with the series and been posed this question, would come up with to, like, break. Because these, as you said, Kyle, these are still pretty good sales.
Yeah.
And, like, I said it earlier, but, like, I feel like just being on the Switch is probably going to carry this to, it's probably going to break 3 million in sales. It'll probably become, like, the second best Kirby
But it won't do 5.
But it won't do 5
I don't think it'll do 5.
No,
yeah.
I don't think
it'll get to 5 million in its
Yeah.
lifetime, but if they can do to almost 3 million with this game, it means a slight change, something, a new hook, something that sets it apart from the previous games, and maybe like even better production values. You know, like making it look like, even if it's 2.5D, just like, you know, making it look even like flashier somehow. That could help. Every little bit like helps there. But both your ideas are pretty good too. Yeah. I see a good future for Kirby. Is the best, like, what I see from this is what I take away from this.
Oh yeah, Kirby's not going anywhere.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like, I meant even a bigger future in store for Kirby than he's had in the past.
It would be cool. It would be cool if they at least like make new character models for the next game.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Kirby doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Another series that's doing good, and I mentioned that's why I brought my open-aired little bad joke in here. Breath of the Wild, which seem to talk about every other episode, becomes the best-selling game in the Legend of Zelda series. Caveat: original release versions only.
So if you add remakes,
no ports and remake sales factored in. There are no ports and remakes. So Wii U and Switch sales of Breath of the Wild combined put it at over 10 million copies. The Switch version alone sold 8.58 million.
That's really funny because it's like, yeah, what has The Legend of Zelda sold if you add up the NES and then the Game Boy and then the Virtual Console and then
Ocarina of Time, Ocarina of Time has every single like re-release, the Virtual Console re-releases, the one that was attached to the pre-order for the Wind Waker originally.
Doesn't count.
That definitely is an account.
They count pack-ins for console launches as games, so like a game that's attached.
But it's a free bonus that you got for pre-ordering.
Doesn't matter. It's a new release. It had Master Quest.
But I mean, you can't count a sale because somebody bought it. I mean,
it's $10. You had to pre-order $10. I knew people who pre-ordered $10 for it and then canceled their pre-order for that.
$10 game right there.
$10 game, still $10. I mean, these lines of questions come up.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's why the caveat exists,
like,
I guess.
You basically kind of like either take Nintendo's word at face value, like they're the ones who say what it is, or you try and dive into this mess.
Where do you think Ocarina's at if you add everything together, though?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's like over like 11 or 12 million.
Oh, so Breath of the Wild will catch it.
Breath of the Wild will eventually, no matter what. Breath of the Wild will, even if you include 3DS sales, it's a little higher than that because I think 3DS version sold like over like 2 million or something.
Sure.
But eventually, within its lifetime of the Switch, Breath of the Wild will definitively become, no questions asked,
no caveats necessary.
The best-selling Zelda game in the series.
Yeah.
They're just crowning it now, which is appropriate. That's a great thing to hear about, but I'm not really here to talk about like how well it did in terms of sales specifically. I'm curious what this means in terms of going forward, because in the past week since this has been announced, I've seen a lot of discussion on message boards and on social media regarding what does this mean for the future of Zelda, and does this mean the end of the quote-unquote traditional or classic Zelda? And that there are some who are now arguing that mainline Zelda games will never ever be anything other than Breath of the Wild style, like open air, open world style. That we will never ever see another Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker style game ever again. The best that we can hope for is a top-down, like 2D or Link Between Worlds style Zelda that comes out in between the major releases. So I want to start there. In terms of the big mainline 3D Zelda games, do you think... they already said the next one will be like Breath of the Wild style, but forever? Do you think there'll never be another game like Ocarina of Time style? Like, and let me define this: traditional classic Zelda, as in like you go to a bunch of different dungeons that have a unique item in there, and you like use that unique, like the old Zelda formula.
Oh, I think that there's a very good chance that we'll get some of that back. I just think that the way the world is structured from like an overall. Like I just don't think you're gonna get these weird little pockets of things stitched together with little arms, like
segmented off zones and stuff.
Yeah, like
yeah.
But I don't think we would have necessarily ever gone back to that, anyways. So like, I don't know. I think to me it's one of those things where like sales are just confirming what they wanted to do, and so that's gonna give them the confidence to just go ahead and do what they want to do with the next game as well.
I think it's funny. Like Aonuma for the last 3 games has publicly said, "I want to beat Ocarina. I want to make the game that beats Ocarina."
It's been a stigma for that for a long time.
Yeah, and I think he finally did it. Right? Like there's a debate over which game is better, but I think he can finally feel satisfied that he made a very good Zelda game that's different. And yeah, I bet that will become the new template going forward.
To an extent, I would like to clarify what you just said. I think the mentality was always to outdo Ocarina of Time.
Right.
As to make a Zelda game that would be viewed by critics and fans as being more successful, just better, plain better than Ocarina of Time. That was the mantra with both the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
I think during Skyward Sword, you started to see the added caveat, the added element of like, not only do we want to do it, we want to start the whole thing about, we're going to start changing the Zelda formula.
Yeah.
And I think that was the more important thing. I think what Breath of the Wild did is they stopped caring about Ocarina, stopped caring about Ocarina of Time and what it did. Stopped trying to make it bigger, better, which was Twilight Princess. Like that, who cares about that? They did something different. They went with like, let's change things up. And they saw the reward and the payout for that is that like they made something that was finally different enough from the previous games, and they're seeing that, as Bloodworth said, the sales are confirming that the direction that they did was like people wanted this. There was a market for this.
You know what I really want to see going forward, and using the sales as kind of evidence. I want to see an overworld and an underworld.
Oh.
I want giant freaking caverns that you come up and like, where am I now?
I love caves. Love caves.
This is my dream for Metroid Prime 4. Is that it is literally just Breath of the Wild underground. Like it's, like it's that. It's
nice.
Like, but if they're not going to do that, next Zelda, I hope they do like dungeons where like the dungeons underground are just like as complex and ridiculous as like the overworld. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's an underworld, and it's not really dungeons per se. It's like this is a giant underworld with like other crap. Oh, Bloodworth. You're such
tramways and stuff. I just something I just thought of that I want to talk about really badly is up until Ocarina, Link looked like a dork. You know what I mean? He looked like Link to the Past, and then Ocarina became like the default Link. And so even though new games came out, that is the Link that was in Smash Bros. That's the Link that's in marketing materials. It still stayed that Link, and obviously like Twilight Princess Link isn't much different, so it kind of stayed that way. And just seeing the silhouette of new Link in Smash Bros. And this game being the best-selling Zelda game ever, I wonder if Link is going to be new Link going forward. I wonder if he's the one who appears on, like, look at all the different games we have. I wonder if he's the one who appears on, like, toys.
I think for a time period he will.
Yeah.
Because Breath of the Wild is so successful, and it is the most current Zelda game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's definitely, that version of Link's will be used in marketing materials for a while.
I love that.
I think the next time you might see it to change is the next 3D Zelda game, whatever the next Breath of the Wild is. If they decide to change up Link, or if it's straight up a new character, it seems pretty like standard. Like when they're getting because we saw Ocarina of Time Link, as you said, for a long time, and then Twilight.
It didn't change. Like Wind Waker didn't change how Link looked, you know. And
Wind Waker and Link was used on a lot of materials for a long time, but it was within the own Zelda.
But when it's time for like a Link to show up in Soul Calibur, it's like they're not using Wind Waker Link, you know. They're like Ocarina Link.
It was this adult Link thing, that kind of came around. And it's been slightly tweaked a little bit with Breath of the Wild. So, no, I just see your point. Like,
Link and Soul Calibur would be so funny.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. I mean, they did it with Yoda. It's just not cool.
The one thing, like, everything Bloodworth said was great. Like, I don't ever expect, I don't know anyone who thought it would go back to being, like, segmented off, like, environments or anything like that. I think the open world environment is, like, they nailed it. They can tweak a few things here and there, but, like, that structure is perfect for Zelda. I think it's in other areas that, like, you even mentioned, like, you thought they wouldn't be surprised if, like, more traditional other elements like dungeons or item stuff came back in some capacity. I think that's what we're all waiting to see what they do is like how much, if any, do they pull back some of those other elements since they went pretty far to the extreme of this new end where it's like all the items you're ever going to have are like introduced pretty quickly. It's open world. There's like these mini dungeons all over the place and 4 little tiny, like slightly bigger mini dungeons in there. But like the notion of going to like more complicated dungeons, we kind of got rid of that. Like we don't need that for this game. That's what I think we're like waiting to see and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in that regard, I think in some capacity, sooner than later, more traditional looking dungeons and more item variety will be coming like sooner than later.
Hookshot will be in the next game.
Hookshot is, please, Hookshot, it's coming.
That's bankable.
Some Hookshot is coming in the next game. Better give credit Kyle Bosman right here. He called it first.
And I bet more populated cities. I bet they'll have more. Like we had like 2 populated cities in Breath of the Wild. I bet there will be more. You know, you just see a lot of ruins. You just see a lot of villages that aren't distinct from each other in that game. And I think that's kind of like, I think a lot of Breath of the Wild is created out of limitation, you know, and I think that they'll be able to do more in the next game, and you might see more dungeons, you might see more items, you might see more enemies and things like that. Just because
bosses.
Yeah, because let's not forget this game technically started as a Wii U only game,
right?
And like Switch is slightly more powerful, so starting a new one ground up for Switch, they're gonna get a little bit added technical benefit there,
right?
So they could more fully realize what you're asking for there, for sure, Kyle. Like, and I definitely do expect to see that a little bit more density in terms of population. I also think some of the narratives, like story, like had something to say about that. It was like Hyrule 100 years after being like ruined and stuff like that. Like it could either be,
but that was there because of the limitation.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, no, I know.
They had everybody die just because they couldn't put everybody there.
Yeah, because you gotta like you want that 10 frames per second.
Right.
Yeah.
Look at this giant alive Hyrule Castle.
Right. There are 4 towns because that's all we could do. Yeah.
It'll be nice to see that.
5, I guess.
I think
6.
there'll be an increase in
quite
that.
A few towns.
There's quite a few towns. Gerudo Village I actually love. I forgot
I think
about
there'll be more variety in human-built, like man-made structures as well.
Sure.
I think there was a little bit of repetitiveness in terms of like everything looked like similar style ruins.
Yeah.
Or village style, like wrecked villages here and there. And it was nice to come across a bunch of it, but it felt like at a certain point it was like, it's just going to be another set of rocks, right? Or another crumpled brick buildings or stone buildings and stuff. And I think they could mix that up a little bit, like have more thematically inclined zones. Because they did a little bit. Like the zones each have like different like climates and stuff to an extent. But I think they could push it even further than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, it doesn't need villages. It doesn't need to be populated, but it needs to be not abandoned.
For sure.
I think.
Yeah, we'll be curious to see... we're not going to hear about it at E3 next Breath of the Wild, but I wouldn't be surprised if another smaller project Zelda is announced in the interim between.
Sure.
And we'll see. Who knows what E3 holds. But I do want to move on to the next point, because we talk about Zelda too much on the show, but I like it. I want to talk about the 3DS, because this was brought up in the financial briefing, and this was a lot of people are pointing this out. Someone even tagged both of us and was like, hey, Kyle and Damiani, you see that 2019 and beyond for that 3DS slide? Nintendo plans to support the 3DS into 2019 and beyond. And as I mentioned, in their notes, in an image from their financial briefing, there's a paragraph next to a slide that says they plan to release 5 3DS games this year and 1 in 2019, but also that they're going to keep supporting the 3DS Beyond. And for those who are curious, the first party announced titles that they have coming out on 3DS coming forward is Dylan's Dead Heat Breakers for 3DS, digital download only. Sushi Striker Way of the Sushido, which will also be on Switch. Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, which will also be on Switch. WarioWare Gold, that is forget if that's not coming out on Switch, right?
No, that one's on Switch.
3DS. Forgot about that. Luigi's Mansion Remake, which is also 3DS only, which is the biggest head scratcher for me. And then Mario and Luigi's Bowser's Inside Story, the re-release or port. I guess it's not really a remake, right? The hands port. You call it that?
It's kind of they redo all the art. Okay. Every single asset.
I saw the art thing, so like, okay, let's call it a remake.
Sure.
Coming out next year, 2019, on their thing. But that's all that they have officially announced. So
yeah, that's
pretty slim pickings.
That's a pretty minimal support. That's again, that's supporting that weird broader audience that really aren't the type of people that watch this podcast. Like it's it's just putting more games out there and keeping new stuff on shelves. I mean, it's not even really new stuff.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, that's not, like, their intense development resources aren't going into those projects.
I feel like this other information, the 3DS, they revealed 3DS has an install base of roughly 72 million now. That's the important thing.
That's not 72 million people buying games.
No,
though.
I
That's
know,
like
but
so
also,
misleading.
So,
I think.
like, yeah, but this is what they're relying on. They have a huge install base. They have a ton of software that people are still like buying, like older games essentially. So it's still bringing in money.
Right. People are still buying Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. They're still buying Mario Kart 7. You know, I believe that.
Like, so I get it makes sense for them. In my opinion, it makes sense for them to like to keep quote unquote supporting it. Like continuously making new 3DS units is more important than announcing new software. I think this is more of a. It's still more than just this, but it's also a little bit of a PR move to message to everyone 3DS isn't dead. Like until if we don't reveal these games and we say nothing or even say it's dead, then these potential sales are gonna be left on the table, and we can use them. Like, and the reason Nintendo gave their own logic though, we can speculate all we want why Nintendo's supporting this, like it's for money and stuff. They actually had a Q&A session and they gave a little bit of insight. The outgoing president and the incoming president basically shared their thoughts on this. And basically, so here's what's up.
Okay.
So from the investor briefing, they said that Nintendo expects 3DS demand to continue, especially among parents. This is because the 3DS is cheaper than the Switch, and as is the software. Parents right now can't afford to buy a Switch for everyone in their household, especially every one of their children. They have multiple children. So Nintendo feels that once the Switch's sales attachment rate is closer to 1-to-1 per, like on a person ratio, rather than 1 per household, that they are around now, then they'll consider moving everything on from the 3DS to the Switch. Mm-hmm. However, as long as there's demand, they will keep supporting the 3DS. So there you have it. Like they have their own logic that like, you know, I don't think many of us might not have thought of that. We were thinking like money. There's still money on the table.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why this. But I do also want to counter this because I got a question coming up in just a second. Like I do think there are signs that like it is winding down. The next mainline Pokemon game is not on 3DS.
Yeah, that's a huge deal.
It's on Switch.
That whole lineup is them winding down.
Oh, yeah, and like that. And so our question comes from Professor Metal Gear.
Great.
Given the continued support of the 3DS, do you believe Nintendo will release any more core games, such as Zelda, Mario, Pokemon, on the 3DS going forward, make spin-off games of those core franchises perhaps, or will they just no longer bother bringing them in favor of just putting them on Switch?
Yeah, I was like brainstorming, trying to think of what would continue on 3DS into 2019 and 2020. And so, I don't know. So I'm thinking maybe like a Golden Sun sequel. Maybe another, so while the Switch gets new Fire Emblem games, maybe the, what was Echoes, right?
Echoes on 3DS.
So maybe Echoes continues as a franchise on the 3DS while the Switch gets the new Fire Emblems. I think that's an opportunity. And I think maybe another top-down Zelda game. We had Link Between Worlds, but also like the fashion one.
Oh, Triforce Heroes.
Yeah, and there was a rumor I read along that I don't know if I believe, but a Link's Awakening remake in that style.
Please don't touch that game.
Yeah. Even if that's not true, like hypothetically, I think that's a kind of thing that could appear. You know, just another Zelda game in that style on the 3DS. And so, yes, I actually do expect, based off these words, that they will continue to put out mainline Nintendo 3DS games. Like maybe even a new Super Mario. Maybe that's where that franchise lives again. Started on DS, right?
Man, if they did Link's Awakening somehow, I would want that game to be on the Switch, and I would want that game to have an art style similar to like a Wario Land Shake It or a Muramasa or something. Like,
ooh, I hear you. That's cool.
Like look like everything is just hand drawn, like cell art.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And you brought up a good point. Like, I actually don't mind if they make any more core titles for 3DS. I don't really think they will. Maybe one more will get on there, like in 2019. I just want them to start bringing those offerings to Switch. Like some of those we did announce are also coming to Switch. Mm-hmm. Way of the Sushido and Treasure Tracker is coming to Switch. Like Luigi's Mansion, we talked about this on a previous episode, but like Luigi's Mansion still like stings a little bit.
It hurts.
That like that's not also coming to Switch. Mm-hmm. And if they made like a Link's Awakening remake, cool, put it on 3DS as well. But I really want it to come to Switch. I think for me, we're rapidly approaching the point. Like once we get into 2019, I'm like, it's fine if you want to keep making 3DSs, Nintendo, and you want to keep putting out random games on it every now and then. But like, you better not offer anything exclusive on 3DS anymore that could be on Switch. And none of these games like are using 3D effects or exclusive or anything like that. That's unique. These all games.
Bowser's Inside Story is very much a 2-screen.
Oh, those
battles, let's get to the next thing I was going to bring up is
the
split screen. Like you need to have a separation or something like that. But beyond those exceptions, I want these games to come out or spend the time to rework it. You know, they reworked the world. Square Enix reworked The World Ends With You. Some people will argue how effective that was, but that was a clearly uniquely 2-screen game originally. Right. Mm-hmm. They reworked it for mobile, and it's also coming out in Switch supposedly later this year. I want that. I just want by next year, let's everything better start coming out on Switch too, please. I don't know. Like
they're trying to keep that thing alive, man. They're trying to keep that product alive.
It will be a sad day because it's weird because Nintendo's in this weird place where like their main system is a hybrid. They don't have a quote unquote dedicated console. So like when this moves on, it's like we just have the Switch. It's like, does that mean it's like the end of like is now Nintendo doesn't have a mainline console, like dedicated console? Is this the end of like the traditional handheld? Like they just solved like it's amazing, but at the same time it's like, will 3DS be the last traditional exclusively handheld developed system they made? Was the Wii U the last dedicated console one? Like,
I mean that's the whole thing we were saying with the Switch all along. Is like that's the step that Nintendo needed to make to get its worldwide appeal, and it's worked. It's just the 3DS is hanging on. Like an iron grip.
Yeah. It's gonna be like a sad. I feel like is it gonna be a sad day when they finally announce like we are no longer manufacturing 3DS? Like it's an end of an era almost. Like at that point,
I almost feel like they're going to announce what comes after Switch before stopping 3DS.
Oh yeah, you do.
You know, it's just gonna be the day they finally say we're not manufacturing anymore. They're like, and now Switch 2. It's like, and then Switch will hang on for too long.
Yeah, I can. You know what, Kyle? I think you are actually going to be right.
Well, the thing
my gut reaction is I think right now, point blank, I think 3DS will not be discontinued until after a Switch successor or new iterative version of Switch.
Because that's the thing is they won't do 2 screens again. They won't. Well, actually, it has touch controls as it is now. But whatever, I see forwards compatibility with whatever. I think the next Switch successor will play all of our Switch games.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be a little. I mean, they might need different carts. Dang. I don't know. The carts are kind of unfortunate.
They might just go like only if you had bought them digitally.
Yeah.
They might start doing that. Like it's not unheard of that only your digital versions are technically backwards compatible with a system.
Yeah. Because I honestly, I think that's like the weakest thing of the Switch right now is just they don't have enough space on them. And I mean, I guess that technology can improve easily as they'll have more space on the carts. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want the next one to have the exact same carts.
Yeah. It's gonna be weird because like I'm just thinking about like Game Boy was dominant, but like DS and 3DS was just like a dominant. Like we're both dominant. Like DS especially.
Yes.
DS is actually their best selling piece of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's amazing. As well as Switch is doing. I don't think honestly in the end Switch will hit what DS did. Like DS is like.
Is it like 120?
No, I think DS is at 154 million lifetimes.
Oh, you're right. It won't break that.
Like,
that's 150, dude.
Like I feel like they'll move on to an iterative version of Switch.
Yeah.
And it'll just by like the thing like DS just like they like 3DS came out, but like people hung on to not 2DS, DS for so long.
After the 3DS.
After that, it's like this unique thing to see like that. Yeah, I'm sorry. The starting to press is like this end of an era thing like that.
I think
gone.
I think I'd be very curious to see what actually happened because we're still so early in the Switch.
Oh yeah,
we still don't know what's going to happen when like
we have no idea.
The Switch gets into those like budget prices to where it does become the thing that people can buy instead of a 3DS. Like how much of that 3DS momentum is going to transfer to the Switch at that point?
Yeah,
for sure.
They're going to want us to buy. They're going to want the new people though. At that point, when the Switch is cheap, they're going to have another big expensive thing for the early adopters to buy too.
Sure, but it'll be something more like
compatible with the Switch.
Yeah, but it'll be more like an XL or a mini or something along those lines. Like it's basically still going to be the Switch. I don't think they're even going to call it something different at that point.
It is really funny how well they sustained the 3DS through hardware iterations. Because it was one for like 2 years.
Yeah, because
there's like a new 3DS to buy like every 2 years.
3DS, new 3DS XL, like whatever the 2DS. They brought a 2DS.
Yeah.
Like they've just kept it going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of us might have laughed at it, but like it showed that it's selling. Still selling. Made good decisions there. I don't really have much else to say about like the 3DS and stuff. Like I feel like this comes up every so often. People ask us about like why don't they just pull the plug on 3DS and move it? Like people complaining why isn't 3DS stuff on my Switch yet?
Well, even in Ben's Don't Skip for Radiant Historia,
it's
like well, it's on 3DS, so I'm skipping it. So like that's
one of the comments.
Yeah, that's multiple comments like that. Yeah.
The analogy I would do is like you open your door to walk to your job every day, and there's like $1,500 just lying there every day you wake up, and instead of picking it up, you just sweep it off your porch. That's what you're asking Nintendo to do is wake up every day and like throw $1,500 off their porch.
Yeah, I have to wonder like a little bit. Like I know they want to support 3DS, but like, if they can convert someone to another Switch sale, isn't that more valuable for the long term for them? Like, cool, someone buys another 3DS, but what if it puts out
but like you were saying, that the cost of the Switch right now, like they're not those sales that they're getting on 3DS, they're not going to convert to Switch sales in the near future.
Yeah, they don't see them as competing products, certainly.
I mean, I see for that. I see that as well, but I also see like someone who's like has neither and is like looking, okay, I'm ready to jump into Nintendo now. It's like, let's say like, oh, I played that Luigi's Mansion on GameCube at a friend's house. My favorite game. Oh, it's only coming out on 3DS. Well, I'm getting that 3DS. And some of the friends like, wait. But like, there's this new system called the Switch, and it has all these other great games. And like, it doesn't have Luigi's Mansion yet, but like, you get all these other great experiences, and it's the one that's being gonna like get all the good new games going forward.
You know what the probably the biggest factor for these 3DS sales has nothing to do with any of that stuff. It's what I call the I need my phone back factor.
What's that?
It's like kids constantly taking their parents' phones to play games, and like, okay, we need to do something. Give them a 3DS so I can keep my phone.
Yeah, and it's that low barrier entry.
Have their own phone.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. All right. Yeah, I can see that. Woo, 3DS.
3DS. Yeah. Keep going, baby.
Good. Keep chugging along.
Love Luigi's Mansion on Switch. I will say that, but yeah, I'm proud of the 3DS for chugging.
I'm like of the 6 games that they announced here.
Yeah.
That's the one that stings the most for me because I really didn't play much Luigi's Mansion on the original one on GameCube. I like barely played it. I did play Dark Moon on 3DS and I loved it.
It's a cool.
So
game,
the prospect of playing more Luigi's Mansion is great. But now I'm like, oh, it looks so much better on GameCube, like through like big 3D graphics on the TV. Oh, this is like I thought it was coming to Switch. It's like coming to 3DS. I'm like, no, I want to play this on Switch on a bigger screen, and I want to play it on a big. I was like, oh, come on, Nintendo, you almost had me. But now, like that comment you said, don't skip. That's me. Like for Luigi's Mansion on 3DS, skip, not playing it.
Wow, he's that guy.
I have a 3DS, but like I want to do that. I don't want to support that. Like I'm actively, as much as I was saying I'm sad, I'm also actively supporting bring it to Switch, so kill the 3DS off. It's like it's kind of, I'm just torn on this.
Yeah,
sorry. That was actually all I had. So we're right at 1 hour mark right here.
That's perfect. That's a good.
That's
podcast,
pretty good time.
Yeah.
But I may reconsider bringing like 1 or 2 questions back for the end as well.
Sure, some off-topic questions.
But like this gives me some flexibility now as well. Like if we do run, like if this was like an hour and towards a 90-minute episode, which we sometimes have hit, it'd be good to be like, oh, we are done. I don't have to feel obligated to answer one more question. So I like this flexibility. I know I didn't talk about Labo. We talked about it on the most recent Frame Trap. Ben did. And if you didn't watch anything, I'm basically just really just interested in it. So I'm not like the best person to really talk about it.
What about Labo sales?
I didn't see the sales. Sorry.
All we have is UK numbers, and it was like number 3 of the week.
Oh, okay.
Of this like video game sales?
Of software sales.
Interpret that for me, Kyle. Like, what does that really mean?
That's surprising to me.
Like, surprising good or bad?
Surprisingly good.
Okay.
I think that it will continue to sell. Whereas a lot of the games that are coming out right now, we won't be talking about in the fall. I bet Labo will still keep going.
All right.
I have faith in how cool the product is. I think kids are going to continue wanting Labo.
I haven't heard of it selling out or anything like that.
It's not selling
Apparently,
out.
Like everyone said, like, I just want to go get one. I want to check it out. And they walked into a store and were able to get it easily.
Yep.
So, that's not an indication that's selling terribly, but it's obviously not, like, selling out. So it's not the other extreme either. So it's got to be somewhere in between. I guess that's what the 3 sales means. It's like somewhere in the between, selling okay and stuff.
It's just a little extra side business. It's not like Nintendo's not relying on Labo.
Have either even touched Labo yet or anything?
No.
Labo and VR are kind of in the same boat where it's like I don't really have enough space to really make use of it. I am looking forward if we can get that stream organized whenever that happens. But
I want that robot suit.
Kyle wants the robot suit.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to wrap it up for this week's episode.
Cool.
Thank you very much for both of you being on here.
Yeah.
And as a reminder, everyone watching, again, if you are a $5 and up patron, you now get early access to this episode on Sundays. Everyone else will get on Tuesdays. Sorry, $1 patrons. You will no longer get this early, but you still get it on Tuesdays. It's okay. Don't worry about it. $5 and up patrons, though, you still get to submit questions for each episode. And I like this. I actually like this. I'll wait for your feedback in the comments for this episode before ultimately deciding on what to do with the next episode. But I feel really good about it. And if we continue doing it, I'll still do submissions the Sunday before we record each episode. And I like this a lot because we got a lot more questions. I think we got like 4 questions in this time. I easily could have fit in another one for sure. So like, yeah, you're going to get more questions this way. And I think you'll all be happier with that. So thank you again for all those great questions. Thank you all for supporting FriendCode and helping us bring it back. And again, if you'd like to support FriendCode, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not a supporter of Easy Allies on Patreon, patreon.com/EasyAllies, just consider pledging even just like $1. It helps keep this show going. It helps us do everything that we do here at Easy Allies. It basically allows us to do what we do, and we all thank you, and I thank you for your support for that. But until next time, may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.